I mean, it's already 10 after, maybe we can get started and.
Yeah, let's start. Okay, or do we have the recording going already?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, welcome everyone. It's October 19th, 2023, and the time is 2:11. Thanks so much for being here. Let's just go around quickly for our introductions. And I think I'll just share. Sometimes I just do that really fast. So I'm Lorene Kamalu, representing the Utah Association of Counties, actually. We have Amber as staff. We have Matt Barraza as the executive director, Judge Michael Zimmerman, Katrina Adair as staff, Tom Ross is a commissioner who's the executive director of CCJJ, Leslie Howitt staff. And I think that's our group. Is that right? So far?
Yep.
All right. Yeah. Well, let's get started and do as much as we can.
Commissioner,
Yeah.
Sure. We also have a visitor in the room with us here.
Member of the public.
Member of the public.
Nice.
Want to introduce yourself?
Lisa Shepherd. I've met you before. I work with Commissioner Sakovich in Utah County.
Oh, yes. Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. We never have a member of the public almost. Thank you.
Word's getting out.
Yeah, I think
Our
that's
portfolio, so.
that is a good sign. And wait, who else is in the background there? Is that not our other commissioner we need to introduce?
Yeah, Rich Morrow.
There we go. Thanks, Rich. I'm glad I looked really close at the.
So
where
how
you
many,
were.
who else do we need? We need 2 more, 3 more, 4 more.
Yeah, probably 4 to have a quorum.
Oh, okay.
And at least one, it sounds like, has communicated that they will be here, and yeah, hopefully some others are just delayed, but yeah, I say we get started and do all that we can. Usually you can take back to Commissioner Sakovich that we have usually at least a quorum, so
Yeah,
it's a distracting time of year. It's pretty darn nice outside, so I'll just say that.
I know it's budget season for just about
everybody. Definitely intense with budgets. Yeah. Okay, so the first item on the agenda, got that one on my phone. Let's have Matt Barraza give us our update on the revised compensation plan.
Well, and so this is just to kind of touch base as to where we're at with the compensation plan that we presented. I believe was that just last time that we did that? Wow, seems like a long time ago.
Yeah.
We've made a few tweaks based on some feedback that we received from the commission when we presented. And then since then, we did have our budget presentation to the governor's office. And we actually were able to get a half-hour sit-down time with Sophia DeCaro, who's the head of that department, which is hard to do. So we felt very fortunate that we were able to meet with her, and she and her staff had a lot of great questions, both about the plan, but then also just getting to know indigent defense statewide in general, and how it's organized and what we're trying to do. So we are waiting to hear back. You know, we won't know until probably first week in December what is approved for our requests. What we plan to do first in that first phase is a pilot project that would have a cap of 50 attorneys throughout the state who would be able to participate in this. They would report their hours and then be paid hourly rather than on the flat fee annual contract. And then we would use that information to be able to better predict how much it would ultimately cost to pay those contractors hourly and bring their pay up to parity with what the Attorney General's office is paying their attorneys. So that's basically it in a nutshell. I don't know that we need to go through the whole presentation again, but we wanted to give you an update there. I think that it was well received by the governor's office and GOPB. And so we'll just wait and see how it goes. We are planning on presenting this to the managing defenders this week as well. And from there, once they've had some time to hear it and give us some feedback, then the plan is to start. Well, we'll wait until we see what the governor's office says, and then based on what we know we're working with for the next year, we can start communicating that to county commissioners throughout the state.
That's great. So that's, yeah, Michael, do you have some questions?
No, it sounds like a great project. I mean, that's a lovely wedge into, what we need to know.
Yeah, I think it'll really be both helping those who are being underpaid, but then also helping us to get a lot more accurate information so that we can plan accordingly.
Yeah, project out costs.
Yep.
Hey, Matt, what is the plan with adjustment of salaries for grantees?
Okay, and actually, yeah, you weren't present at the.
I missed the last.
You missed the last meeting. Okay, so let's just review the phases for Rich.
And hey, Matt, before you do that, just welcome to Margaret Lindsay. And also I saw Michael Drexel on, so we've got two more.
All right. So we have, it's a three-phase approach, and just to summarize, it would be converting the flat fee annual contracts to hourly contracts. So we'll be addressing that disincentive that's associated with those. The first phase would be a pilot project where we would have it capped both in the amount of people who will be able to participate in that, as well as the cost. And so it would be capped to a $20,000 increase of those contracts per year, and we break that down into quarters. Then we would have three pay rates depending on the type of contract. So a justice court contract would be the lower pay rate, district court, juvenile court, and parental defense would be that mid-tier, and then the higher tier would be for specialty contracts that are for homicides or serious first-degree felonies, minimum mandatories. So that would be the first phase, the pilot program. The second phase, once we had some better data based on the pilot project, would be to open it up to whoever wants to opt in on that. And then phase three would be eventually requiring our grant partners to convert to the hourly model as well.
What about full-time offices like Salt Lake County
Yeah.
and Utah County?
So part of our ask once we get past the pilot project would be to incorporate in our ask to increase the to include cost of living increases for those offices, and then for the offices that do not have parity with the AG's office, to ask for money to bring them up to parity as well. So if you could go to the total ask. There we go. So these numbers will change as we get more information. But we would estimate this amount to bring Utah County and Weber County up to par, and then we would check regularly with the AG's office to see if they're and ask to match their COLA increases for full-time public defender offices as well.
What about Salt Lake County?
Well, so we're basing these tiers off of the current AG and the Salt Lake County DA and LDA's increases, but Salt Lake County would be included in the
Because
The
the
regular-
grantees, right, are the IDC grantees right now
Mhm.
in every county are not at parity with the AGs.
So like that is the only one that.
Salt Lake County is paying parity with the AGs,
Right.
but the grantees themselves are not getting, that are full-time defender officers are not getting the AG increase that's funded by the IDC for their IDC-based lawyers.
Mhm.
Is there a plan for that?
You know, I don't know that we've addressed that specifically, but again, this is a long-term plan, and so we can incorporate that into the phase two piece of it.
Drexel, and the next two.
Sorry, I was
friends.
accidentally muted, but Michael Drexel has a question.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I'm traveling with my family today, so I apologize for being late and apologize for having my camera off. How does the hourly compensation model work with overtime?
So they would be capped at a maximum that would correspond with the AG grades, and so they would hit a cap at a certain point and not receive any additional compensation beyond that.
And is the hourly billed toward like particular case work, or is it hourly because you're in the position of that public defender?
It would be according to the type of contract that they would have. So the lower amount would be towards justice court. There'd be a mid-tier for district court, juvenile court, and then a higher tier for complex felonies, minimum mandatories, murders, and the like.
And that's part of why I was asking. I appreciate you explaining that a few minutes ago. It seems to me like there are going to be district court public defenders who get a homicide. So will they bill at the homicide rate when they're working on the homicide case, or will they be working only as a district court rate because that's what their contract is for?
Yeah, the initial, what we're thinking initially is that it would be that district court rate. There are a handful of contracts throughout the state currently where they are separated out, where they only deal with homicides and minimum mandatories, and so that would be the additional higher tier there. So there wouldn't be a whole lot of contracts as they're structured right now, at least at that tier. Now, I suppose it's possible in the future that different counties will want to follow that model and maybe designate certain contracts to handle those cases, and they would be eligible for that compensation rate.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask one other question, Chair Kamalu?
Sure.
Thank you. Who's the gatekeeper on the hourly model in terms of if you've got somebody who's spending a whole lot of time on one case? Like, what's the supervision structure in terms of the contract attorneys and who's watching that?
So that would be tracked by the managing defender. So they would report those hours to the managing defender. We provide, or all of the contractors have a defender data software management, and so they could enter those hours in that program. So there's not a whole lot of costs or startup costs associated with that. And it would actually be a management tool for that managing defender to look and say, you know, not only like what's going on with this case that you're spending all this time on it, you know, that's not, as we get to our next discussion topic, that's not a bad thing, right? We want people to spend as much time as they need to on any given case, but then the manager will also be able to look and say, right, you've only, you're not spending enough time out of court. Like all of the hours that you're reporting are in court. What are you doing out of court? Why? When are you meeting with your clients? When are you doing phone calls? And so it'll be a good conversation topic for the managing defenders to help them have some, be able to pinpoint if there are any issues they need to bring up with the people that they're supervising.
Thanks, Matt. One of the things I like about you is you always have good answers.
Always, all the time.
Thank you so much.
Motion to adjourn, anyone?
Okay, so Margaret has in the chat, let me pull that up. At what rate are we thinking about for appeals?
You know, this plan is, we have not incorporated appeals into this plan. So
Okay.
that is something we'll need to take a look at. So I appreciate the question. We'll make a note of that.
And then my question is are we the only county then that has the model of contracted defense attorneys, and how does that play into all of this?
Well, the vast majority, well, almost all of the rural counties, we'll say that, all of the rural counties use contractors. So Davis County is the only first or second class. Well, no, St. George also has county contract attorneys. So
And Weaver.
and Weaver is kind of a hybrid as well. So no, you're not the only one, but you are the only large county, I would say.
Well, but I mean, even in Utah, I mean, we have to, just on the juvenile side alone, for example, I have soon to be 12 contract attorneys for conflicts. So I think almost everybody's in that boat somehow.
Okay. And I'm curious if the managing defender, Todd Utzinger, if he like weighed in on it, or if you got some feedback from him. I don't know. That's helpful.
We're presenting this to him and others tomorrow, actually, so we'll get some feedback from them.
Great. Okay. So it's just an update. We're not really taking action on this yet, right?
Well, even if we wanted to, I don't think we could. We're at 7 right now.
Yeah. But normally you would want the commissioners to vote on whether to proceed with this plan.
I would like that, just because we are, once we know what the governor's approved, we will be more publicly promoting this, you know, going to county commissions and sharing this. And so it would be good to know that we have the full approval of the commission in doing that. But as I said, we're not going to know how the budget plays out until probably late November, early December. So we can, and this will tie in with our scheduling. I think we can put this on the agenda for the next commission meeting to take a vote on it. And that should be actually some good timing as far as knowing where we're at with the budget and how we can proceed.
Yeah. That sounds good. Yeah, I'm really glad you had that time with Sophia DeCaro. It looks like there's a few more questions. Tom, Ross.
No, thanks, Matt and your staff. I know there's a lot of work that's gone into this. It's, you know, I feel that we're doing the right things. It's a little bit, makes me a little nervous that it almost seems like it would have been easier in my mind if we had dealt with the pay disparity issue in one setting and then going to a different model at another time. It's hard. My only fear a little bit, and I'm somewhat trusting that you've got a better handle on this than in my mind, is that I hear conversations about, well, maybe we need to add this in, or we need to add this group in. And are we, by going through this change and making these appropriate, necessary pay increases? So none of this is about raising pay. It's about being financially stable going forward in at least the short term, the next few years, not feeling like we're getting squeezed so much on this pay model that we can't do anything or even maintain what we're doing. Do you feel comfortable that I know you're saying we need to see what the governor's office, certainly that's a big part, and ultimately really what EACJ appropriations does, which the governor's office will be a big indicator. But there's just a part of me that just worries a little bit that we've got these two big pieces moving and we're not, I hope we're clear enough on what the impact's going to be that we don't see ourselves a year or two down the road going, that was a bigger bite. I don't know. That's just my comment.
Well, and you're right in that all of this is contingent on funding from the governor's office, right? We're not using anything above our existing funding to try and do this. This would all require new investment by the state to make it happen. And I think as far as getting the data from the pilot project will really help with that, and then also having the caps involved too will really keep things under control as well. So once people hit those caps, then that'll be.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, hopefully it's not a county against a county battle thing when we start hitting caps and someone else didn't do what they thought they could and someone they thought did more. But maybe this is a big change, and I think it's on the right track. I do think that sounds like going forward, this will be a better model. It's just a lot in one bite that just, I don't know. I hope that relationships and people going, well, so what, one county got more money than we got and we didn't I don't know. But I have faith in that you guys have really thought this through and that we'll be able to be okay, or at least have good explanations for those that maybe missed out a little bit.
Thank you. And Michael Zimmerman.
I guess I have some of the questions Tom has that, where this is going. I mean, in the abstract, where this is going, I think is a good place. In the pragmatic level, yeah, I'm just I don't mean to be pessimistic, but I think we've managed to continue to move ahead kind of incrementally. And I would, we have a lot of decisions to make before we take any big jump, but I've been impressed the degree to which we've been able to hold support for all of this over the past 7 or 8 years. And I think Tom's also suggesting that some of the same concern that we need to hold the coalition together. But I think the idea is good. The question I had was about tracking. I mean, are we going to do something like have them use the Defender app or something like that to keep track of time? I mean, I'm concerned a little about kind of a soft accounting mechanism for hours spent when you have dollars on the table based on an hourly.
Yeah, those would be tracked through the Defender data case management system. And we've done a couple of trial runs with that, and it works just fine for tracking those. We're not asking for hour or 15-minute increments or anything like that. We're just asking for 2 categories at least during the pilot project, and this could change as things develop. But the plan for the pilot project is to track how many hours you spend a day in court and out of court. So those will be just the 2 main breakdowns. And so I know that on the one hand, going from a system where you're not tracking any hours and then being asked to track hours might seem onerous, and that's why we're trying to keep it as basic as possible with the pilot project.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Having gone through that myself when I was at LVA, when we went from no time tracking to case tracking, that was a big cultural shift that we all had to go through.
Yeah, I'm glad you've had that experience. That will be helpful, really, for you to be able to relate with everyone else. Who's going to need to do that. Michael Drexel, do you have another question, comment?
No, I think my hand is still up from last time. Sorry, I was driving, so I didn't put it back down.
Yeah, no problem. And from the county perspective, I represent first and second class. And of course, the one I know very best is the county where I work with the budget. And we have heard loud and clear from our managing defender that's been there since like 2014, does very good work, that it has really quite suddenly and concernedly become a problem that attorneys can get so much higher pay somewhere else. So the domino, of what in the state AG's office, like I know for sure in certain, probably only 2 areas in my time as a commissioner, has it really created major shifts that are very difficult to keep up with in county budgets and law enforcement. For sure, that shortage, supply and demand, been wage wars there, and even before my time, difficulties for jurisdictions to keep up with that and to really provide what needs to be provided for the public. And now, we've already in this whole year had to increase for the prosecutor's office to stay competitive suddenly, unexpectedly, because we've really been competitive, but huge concerns there by our elected attorney and his, representing and trying to keep his team together. And yeah, it's just gone right to also with the contracts and the defenders. And so anyway, I appreciate the attempt. Hopefully the timing is actually good. Like, I feel like even if we can't get everything that we want right now, the need is there. The need to be competitive with defense pay is just certainly undeniably important. So that's the county perspective from me. I don't see any other hands or comments. So maybe I did have the thought that it might be nice if Amber can send these slides out again for all the commissioners. I don't mind looking through those again to remind myself of all the ins and outs. And again, so much work with Leslie and the intern as well. So lots of work. If you recall, they looked at how this works in other states, and there's just a lot of work in this.
Yeah, I'll absolutely send those out.
Okay, well then, so that we can kind of stay on time for everybody's busy schedules, let's go to the next one. The ABA workload study discussion.
Right, well, I know that a lot of people have heard about this. This is a study that has been in the works for years, literally years, and has finally been published. And what it is the American Bar Association conducted a nationwide study on workloads for public defenders. So prior to that, the only nationwide study that took a look at attorney workloads, and it wasn't even workloads, it was caseloads, was back in 1973. And that, as soon as that study came out, it was almost immediately panned as being really, it wasn't scientific. It was, the lore is that there were some people at a conference that got together and kind of wrote some numbers down to say, okay, well, how many cases should a public defender have a year? And they kind of settled on 150 felonies or 400 misdemeanors per year. And that was kind of adopted as the going caseload from then. But as I said, there was even soon after that was published, there was some pushback on it, saying that those numbers aren't really based on anything other than kind of a gut check that the people in the room put together. But those were what they were. Those were the numbers that were looked at as a measurement. And finally, this national study has come out that has taken a look not at the number of cases, but actually the type of cases. So a felony case can mean very different things according to what the actual charge is, right? Like a retail theft case, it's a felony, will require a lot less work than a homicide will. And so this 73 workload or caseload study didn't account for that nuance. This new study took a look at the different types of cases and categorized them, and got a group of experts together and practitioners together, and through what's called the Delphi method, came to a consensus as to how much the average type of case should take, how many hours it should take. And then based on those hours, we can determine what an appropriate caseload is for an attorney at a given time, not only looking at the number of cases, but the type of cases and how many hours each of those cases should expect. We should expect an attorney to spend on each of those types of cases. So that is kind of the background behind this. I would note that that Utah engaged in a similar study back in 2019. Now this is before my time here, so I'm a little rusty on the details, but they engaged in a similar process on a local level and took a look at caseloads, and we will compare the results of that Utah study that was done in 2019 and the nationwide study that was done and just published last month. And my understanding, the question is why didn't the IDC pursue this Utah numbers when that study was completed? My understanding is that there were so many areas throughout the state that were not meeting even that outdated 1973 numbers that the IDC chose to focus on bringing those counties up to that bare minimum level before pursuing a higher the Utah standard that came out of the RAND study.
So comparing the Utah study, I can actually, this is only
Oh, okay.
Comparing the new national study to the Utah study, short version of this, they end up being pretty similar. I just ran the numbers on the entire state and it's less than 10% difference, but we can hop in and look at the specific numbers. So as I said, the hours per case type are fairly similar. I have highlighted in gray which standard is higher for which case type. So the Utah RAND study had a higher number of hours for murder versus the national study had a higher number of hours for high sex felonies. When it comes to felonies is where we see the next lowest category of felonies is where we see the biggest numbers. Sorry for all the text, but in effect, the Utah RAND study had murder cases, high sex cases, and then every single other type of felony. It did not break it down. And so every other type of felony was about 37 hours. And the new national study instead chose to break those down into high other, middle, and low. And so that's where you're going to see a lot of discrepancy between 37 hours and whatever the number is that the national study came to consensus on. This particularly pronounced in that high other, where the national study would say those cases would take 99 hours versus the Utah study would have said 37. And then finally, the other key thing to note is when it comes to OSCs or PVs, the numbers in the national study are much higher than the Utah rand study. So Utah said it was about 5.5 hours for probation violations, depending on whether it's a felony or misdemeanor. The new national study says it's 13 hours, which puts it on the same level in terms of work as a low misdemeanor. As we said on the first slide, the national study took into account 17 different state level studies. And the median for the state level study for probation violation was closer to that 5.5 number. So the national study is the only study that has come to that 13 number, which is double what the state studies have said. Any questions on the differences between these two?
That's very interesting. And welcome to Commissioner Wally, who's in with us now.
Oh, yeah.
So, so the next steps that we'll need to take is, we do our assessments every year of different systems and where they need more attorneys to do the work. And as I mentioned, previous to this, we've been focusing on those baseline standards, the antiquated 1973 standards. But then going forward, we'd like to adopt either the Utah study or the national study. I do like the national study better in that it has that additional layer of nuance there with the high felony, mid and low felony. The Utah rand really just lumped third-degree felonies up to first-degree felonies all in the same category, and there's a lot of variation there as to how much time a case is going to take. But then by doing this, we can really, emphasize to the different our different partners that this is how much time we really want attorneys to be spending on these particular kinds of cases, and just changing that mindset as far as what is to be expected. It will take some time to work up to that. Pam has a.
Yeah, Pam's here. Hi, Pam. Go ahead. You've got a question?
Well, no, I was just going to say, I think this is super interesting and really helpful because when we did the RAND one, the numbers were so drastically different than our current situation. I think we were all like, whoa, and like panicked. And so it's really interesting to see it wasn't as out of whack as it should be. Cause like at the time we were like the number was jumping so significantly that anyway, it just makes me feel a little bit like it's a little reassuring is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I bet. That's a great comment. And Michael Zimmerman?
Yeah, it's obviously in the felonies, there's quite a huge gap. That the reason Matt talks about is the reason we did not proceed further in 2019 because, the standards were the 72 standards or whatever were still, we didn't meet in Utah, much less anything more current. The question is, I was going to have Matt is, have you projected out the impact and number of lawyers if you actually, took those felony numbers and put them somewhere in the range?
We have.
They read your mind. Look at that.
So yes, so right now across Utah, looking at just district court, justice court, the whole, as you all know, the whole nother beast. It's just too hard to get it here for now. So looking at just district court, currently employed, they're about the equivalent of 130 full-time attorneys. So Rich, we did some guesstimating on LPA, but about 70 attorneys were thinking work full-time on district court if you exclude management time. It'd be somewhere in that range. And then the rest of the state, it's about 60 full-time equivalents. If you were to apply the Utah RAND standards, Utah District Court would about be 900,000 hours. I finished running the numbers earlier today. The national standard hours are very similar. It's a little lower, but it's in the mid 800,000 hour range. And that would require about 450 full-time attorneys. So we're talking about 3 times as much work as we have right now, just in district court. If you look back at those 1973 NEC standards, those would only require 120 FTEs. So way lower than these new standards. But as we've also talked about in the last couple of minutes, Utah only recently reached that 120 FTE level, and only because of the incredible amount of grant funding we have given out and the recent increases from counties. But we, as a state, we were not at the NEC levels, and now we just have pockets where we still have to get them up to NEC.
So obviously it will be a quite the endeavor to get up to that, to fill that gap between where we are right now and where we would need to be with these standards. And other states have taken their own plans and put together multi-year plans to get there. New Mexico has a 5-year plan that they put together. A lot of it involves pipeline issues, getting more law school students, getting more people going to law school, and getting more law school students interested in doing indigent defense. And so that's something that we'll need to look at here on a local level as well. But if as agency, this is what we want to do and where we want to go, then staff will start putting together our own plan on how to get there and what that would look like.
You know, this is just a thought from someone whose background is not as an attorney. But it seems to me similar to medical that a lot of physicians, for example, go into primary care because that's just really what they want to do. It's not because of the pay, believe it or not. It's just gotten harder and harder for that level of care. And lots of things that are difficult also in insurance, HMOs, et cetera, et cetera. So it seems like it would be a great help as pay becomes more equitable for indigent defenders with other options out there in the legal profession, that there will be more who will feel like they can follow their heart because they'll also get pay. So just a thought from someone who's from a different background. So let's see, I think Tom Ross, you were next.
Yeah, thanks, Lorraine. This is interesting. I mean, and just as you were going through the explanations, the law enforcement's had similar kind of national studies that have recommended certain levels of staffing, you know, per population. They've had numbers that show how much out of service time an officer to be fully productive, it shouldn't exceed, you know, certain numbers. And it's a tough balance because it changes a lot. I will say, just looking at this, in one sense, you're saying, or this study is saying, that we're at a 66% deficit today from what we need to handle our caseload. And I think that would be a really, really hard sell for purse string holders to recognize. I would suggest this just from a strategy. If we do decide to go this route, I don't think we should be educating this and asking for significant potential funding increases at the same time in a fiscal year that's tight. It's not the fiscal years we've had up until for the last 7 or 8 years with COVID starting out in a bad place, but a lot of money being pumped in. I think this could scare purse string holders into thinking we're going to be coming at them with huge costs in a relatively short period of time, year or two or three. I don't know. That's just what I sense. You know, you heard me a little bit concerned or worried even about the potential narrative of the expansion. And then you throw in a number that we're going to try to work towards, which is maybe the right thing to do. The timing of how all that comes out is probably more important than any one of these arguments, in my opinion. But it's a much bigger, it's a bigger deficit than I would have thought, just based on my limited knowledge in criminal justice conversations, knowing that probably every organization within the criminal justice system is struggling significantly with staffing. And the state's been grappling pretty heavily with corrections and law enforcement. To Lorraine's point, just looking at the numbers they've been throwing in, because corrections has been on a 12-hour mandatory overtime for 7 years, trying to find ways to improve that. This could scare, purse string holder groups. At the same time, we're asking for quite a bit, not more money necessarily in an appropriation today. The impact over the next few years could be fairly significant. I don't know, just my thoughts based on sitting in some budget discussion.
No, I that is a totally valid point, and one that we will have to strategize about as far as implementation and how we seek to fund those increases if and when we do. Yes, I look forward to any assistance and guidance that we can get as we embark on that. I think that the both of these are things that are needed, right? Like that we need to have the parity and the compensation there so that we can keep people doing the job, and so that they're compensated fairly and not carrying multiple contracts or doing a ton of private work so that they can pay the bills. But then on the other hand too, even if you are being paid well and you have too many cases to properly represent everybody who's on your caseload, the attorney may not be suffering at that point, but you're going to have a lot of their clients who are not getting the attention that they need, which is just as big of a problem, more of a problem, to be honest, than the compensation. I mean, they're inextricably bound, but I think that we definitely need to pay attention to both of them. The strategy, I think, practically, as you say, is an important consideration, because none of this is a given as far as getting funding for either the compensation or for the appropriate workloads. So I think that's where leaning into everybody's collective experiences and expertise will be helpful, very necessary.
No, I appreciate that, and I agree that if I was putting a first, second, third, I think the people that are doing the job, we have to pay, commensurate to what others are being paid. We got to make we have to have parity. So that seems the priority. And I think folks that are working overly hard, like many are doing today, they feel better, at least if they're getting some recognition and compensation. So that has to be the priority. I think as we look at a strategy, trying to build in what the numbers are, a timeline with a smaller number is probably going to be important, because 450 from 130 is such a huge, significant increase. It's almost worth it's almost easier to say, no, we're not opening that door. Yet if we say, and maybe, and this is probably what you're talking, Matt, is over the course of X number of years, if we can build in, you know, this smaller number that gets us, you know, maybe an additional 100 attorneys, or I don't know, but but I do think the timing of how we do that and how this, I mean, typically we want to put out the study results, but I just think, this all coming out at the same time with what we're doing could be counterproductive. It could create such a big concern that we could be fighting battles. And you're going to have counties that are going to have to accept this too. So this isn't just a state funding. This is telling counties, you've got to step up and take on this as well. So yeah, it'll be good conversations. I do appreciate the reports being brought forward. We're just going to need to be smart, I think, how we go about it.
Yeah, I agree.
Judge Zimmerman.
Yeah, it just raises for me the same problems that our study did in 19. Yeah, and I think this is what Tom's saying, if you put a target up that's 3 times what we're doing now statewide, the only alternative to taking it on is to question the need, raise some fundamental questions about the level of service, which is, I think, always lurks in the background with criminal defense. And I think the comparison that Chairman raises with healthcare. I mean, I have a daughter who's a PA, and PAs were brought into the healthcare system to free doctors up, and all the doctors are specialists now. And the PAs in primary care want to get out of it because it's down to 15 minutes a visit and months away. So everybody in the system flees this kind of service to some degree. If every law student had to go spend 2 years in a defender's office or 5 years, that would be a great program. You could never get it done, but yeah, because they want to go get the high paid jobs in private sector, just like doctors.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, specialists versus primary care, such a big difference. Yeah.
well, it's a dilemma. I think if making a big reveal is kind of dangerous.
Mm.
Well, and that's why we're bringing it to you first, right? And I think that if the commission wants to work towards these numbers, then, as I said, then we as staff can get to work on putting together a plan to implement it. And like I said, it would probably be a multi-year, multi-step plan. I don't know when that would be ready to roll out. Certainly, the budget, state budget season for this fiscal year is well underway, as Tom knows, and so that's not something that we would be able to try to incorporate into anything this year for sure. But we can definitely work with our county partners as well, as far as working with them to see what kind of collaboration we can do to incorporate these standards.
So Matt, if I can,
Yeah.
I mean, Tom and Michael, to your point, this is a long-term effort. I've been in the job that I am in 7 years. And when I started this job that I am in now, there was talk on the part of Salt Lake County to put our entire contract out to bid. There's an educational process that goes into this, and it's a long-standing educational process, because what most people don't understand is what's behind the numbers. What are people doing that make these numbers the way they are? What are the tasks that they perform? One of the things that we did in our office, and it's one of the things that will be attended, we'll get this data, is time tracking. For us, time tracking demonstrated to our county funding partners what our lawyers were doing. And it created a narrative to explain what is it that criminal defense lawyers do? What are the tasks that they do? What does a visit to the jail take? How much time does that take? What's it take to get through security? What's it take to get on the floor? What happens when there's some sort of shutdown at the jail that prevents you from visiting? How many hours does it take to do that? What's the travel time to go from place to place? What are the things that happen in a courtroom that let people understand? So when you look at these numbers, there is a huge lift, but it's a long-term process. It took us 7 years. We never used the word parity. We used the word market rate. Our lawyers deserve to be paid what the market rates said that they were paid. We never used that word when we talked to Salt Lake County. And this April, they came in and said, you've got good market numbers. You convinced us that that's right. You have the right number of lawyers, although I think we need more lawyers, but that's a fight for a different day because it's a whole new educational process. My suggestion is we have to be thoughtful about what our educational narrative should look like. Because when people begin understanding and see data and information about what lawyers do, they go, holy smoke, that takes a lot of time to do those sorts of things. And I understand now, if someone is driving to the jail in a rural part of the state, and it's a 3-hour round trip to get to the jail, that's almost half a day of work. If you think about just the travel time to get there, that time is worth something relative to how you deal with the case. The biggest complaint that I get from, and I take complaints from my office, I let any client that wants to talk to me call me. About 40 or 50 of them call me a week. But the biggest complaint that I get, and I don't think my lawyers are deficient in any way, is I don't have enough time to talk to my lawyer. I can't talk to my lawyer. And our lawyers are triaging cases. If there's a case that's set 6 months down the road, they're not going to go to the jail. Because even for us, travel time and getting to see a client, at least 2 hours out of the day to see one client in our jail. And the more we are able to create those kinds of narratives about what that work looks like, this doesn't become a number, it becomes the identification of the kinds of tasks that you need to do to be minimally competent and qualified to do the work. I think we can do it. It's going to be a lot of work to get there.
Thank you. Michael Drexel, I think you have your hand up.
Thanks, everyone. First of all, thanks to Matt and Leslie and the IDC team for bringing this up for conversation and discussion. And I agree with everything that Tom and Michael and Rich have said. I would add this for consideration. For the IDC to have credibility with policyholders, they need to be able to trust that we are on the forefront, on the cusp of all of the developments in indigent defense. And I worry that by not speaking about this in a transparent public way, these numbers and the studies, that the question may be asked of us at some point, well, how long have you known about this? Have you been working towards these things all along, kind of behind the scenes without really letting us know what the ultimate objective is? And so I think part of the messaging here may need to be, here are the studies, here are the numbers. You as policymakers deserve to be aware. We are not making an ask for that, but we want you to know that this is what is developing within this part of the law and the criminal justice system, and that our asks are very conservative in comparison to maybe what the best practice numbers actually indicate. That could actually help them see that we're being judicious about the requests that are being made.
That's an excellent point, Michael. Thank you for that. And and you only have to look at the number of lawsuits throughout the country to see that if a state is not proactive about doing this, and if it comes to this point of crisis, then it will be out of the legislature's hand and in the hand of the judiciary to try and fix whether that's a state or federal judge.
Michael Zimmerman.
Yeah, I wonder if sort of a combination of what Mike's suggesting and what Rich is suggesting, a humanizing of it, so that, you know, a day in the life of, which I think would be, you know, a bit of that would be persuasive without these abstract numbers that, you know, we've only got a third the lawyers need. Yeah, dogs. And then the other, I think Mike Drexel's point is that, and I think it's legitimate, that we need to, if we can say we have a third of what we need, but we can probably get by with, you know, a half of what we need, or that's our target. We look like we're being conservative.
Well, I think
a lot of this seems like a selling proposition. And I think that it is, but.
Yeah, I think to that point, and also to Rich's, and, you know, tying in some of these things that have been said, is that whatever scale this is implemented, or whatever timeline it is, it's going to be incumbent on the offices and the attorneys and the managing defenders to show that as new positions are being added, that attorneys are accounting for what they're doing, right? That as they are receiving lighter caseloads because more attorneys are coming into the office, that they are spending this many hours on this case, this many hours on the other case. You know, we talked about with the compensation, trying to keep it, you know, simple, but I think that as these standards are implemented, it's going to be really necessary both to show that the attorneys are expected to put in the time for each case, but then also to demonstrate to the funders that the attorneys are making use of that extra time and spending the time as we're promising they're going to.
And Tom?
Yeah, just I appreciate the comments everyone's made, and Rich and Michael, in this, what you said. I do agree that there's an education component that's an important role that I think IDC plays, and trying to help educate the state as a whole as to, you know, maybe what the needs are. The tricky part here is, and we can't lose sight of this, is it's not just state appropriations we're talking about. It's not just about getting the legislature to understand and agree and fund. Everything we're talking about here puts a burden on counties as well. So the very partners that we survive with have to feel good about what we're doing, or we could potentially risk being the bad name for them. You know, maybe we saw this a little bit in victim advocate funding, trying to come up with some standards, telling groups that, you know, you've got to do this level. And we lost some, you know, counties, 2 or 3 counties, because they felt like we were pushing them to do more than they wanted. Now, we can argue rightfully that this is in the best interest of the citizens, but we still survive based on the partnership. So I think that, yes, I think everything that's been said, and what Michael was saying about, we need to educate, it's educating and asking at the same time for the funding. That might be the bad way to start it. Maybe it starts out with an education process, and then we come up with a timeline and some numbers, and just making sure that we keep our counties in this as well, so that we don't lose support by them while we're trying to push something that is undoubtedly needed. Now it's a matter of what's the willingness and where's the balance.
I'm just going to say one thing and then we'll go to you, Michael Drexel. But in the short time really that I've been an IDC commissioner, Indigent Defense State Commissioner, whatever I am, when the first executive director, Joanna Landau, was invited to go and share at the annual councils and commission members, so the county executive and legislative bodies, their conference in September every year. Like, people took a break. Very many people, you know, it was in the early afternoon and they needed to step out and go take a break, and people really didn't understand too much, or didn't seem too motivated really to learn about this. But I do think that, and in just these short few years that I've been part of it, you know, the whole criminal justice system is getting more attention. We now need to have our criminal justice coordinating councils, and I see that, I really do see that very many commissioners and council members are interested and motivated to learn a lot more, and that's a good thing. So yeah, I think from even just when Matt spoke at the Justice Summit, which now there's only been 2 of those, that Utah Association of Counties has hosted justice summits. There's more attendance. He spoke. If it was that one or a different one, Matt, I just know that like people are wanting to talk to him. Like, they're very interested now. They know that it's important to understand this. They know that there is funding to help. They better trust the funding. They didn't trust it in the beginning as much, you know. So anyway, just sharing a little bit more of what I've seen there. I think there is gratefully a progression that's happened in just a few years. And thankfully, I think there's a lot more executive and legislative county leaders who are interested. And then was it you, Tom, we were going to go to? No, it was Michael Zimmerman.
No, I'm
Oh,
done.
sorry, Michael Drexel.
Thank you. I feel lucky to be part of this conversation with y'all, and I don't intend to prolong it, but Tom's last comment about the need to not lose sight of the fact that we're also talking about local government expenses as they're shouldering so much of the responsibility financially for these defense resources, caused me to think that it's actually a really big and intricate involvement that we would be embarking on to try and dial up to the best practice standard, or whatever we're calling these defense resource hours. Because I think we would expect that if there were 400 plus defense attorneys, full-time defense attorneys, criminal defense attorneys that were doing this work on behalf of the indigent population, that they would be bringing more issues to court, as they should, and litigating more issues, which then implicates maybe additional judicial resources. I mean, one of the sad realities of the criminal justice system that we're all familiar with is that it actually chugs along slowly in the way that it does, and actually gets some stuff done because so many people just plea bargain so many of their cases and nobody goes to trial or contests issues. And as you build in capacity for defendants to raise the issues and challenge the evidence, again, as they should be able to do, which is desirable, it's going to be more court time and more prosecutor time. So now you're looking at more judges and more bailiffs and more, I mean, it's really an expansive and interrelated sort of ask that would be made if we were trying to move just one component, the defense attorney component, up to, the proper capacity. So.
Thank you. Just a little thing, my laptop battery's running low, so you'll be seeing me switch to my phone, but I'm gonna be with you and don't have to start driving to my next meeting until about 3:45. So let's see. I think Pam, you had your hand up, right?
Oh, I think Michael actually kind of hit on it, because I think that was part of my question is I mean, they're not totally connected, but Michael, the court's asking for additional judges here as well, right? Or do you know?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. We are. So that's percolating in my mind here as we're speaking, is for many, many years, the Judicial Council has only taken what the true crisis need was for judicial officers to the legislature. We say we need one judge in this particular part of the state because they are the most burdened, carrying the most caseload part of the state. And this year, the Judicial Council, there's a belief that, we have not done the legislature any favors by communicating only a portion of need. And so this year, the council has instructed us to communicate to the legislature our true need, which is that there's a need for 4 district court judges, 2 juvenile court judges, and 4 domestic commissioners to really address pending caseloads. And so that's 10 judicial officers, which is going to be the Judicial Council's number 2 funding priority request for this legislative session. And I don't think any of us are naive enough to think that the legislature is going to say, oh, good, yes, take all the money for 10 new judicial positions. I think they're going to say, well, we can afford to do this or that, and we'll figure out how to make it work. But having those conversations of true need, again, back to the context of indigent defense, true need based on studies and research and what we can actually reasonably request in good conscience, affordably within budget constraints, are 2 different parts of the same conversation.
And maybe Lorraine, to that point, this is maybe a little bit to what I was saying with the 450 attorneys, for example, is there's a difference between a national standard as to what the need is and what we're justifying as our state need based on these factors or these criteria. And no doubt in my mind, if the judiciary asked or even laid out a plan for 3 times or for, 3 times the amount of judges, that it would be a difficult sell. But in the same token, this is a national study. We didn't do it. It's still pertinent, but it's just how we try to connect it into what Utah's need is. Knowing that if you undersell year after year, then that's a drastic price that's paid and you're not doing anyone a service. But if the number's too big, you lose interest. People tend to start backing out of it because they feel like that's just a ridiculous request. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into budget discussions of some type, usually it's a funding request for a piece of legislation. And when that first number hits whatever group is there, the numbers of people per string that will say that's just a ridiculous number. And then we end up with somewhere much significantly less. And oftentimes it wasn't a ridiculous number, but it was much bigger than they thought it should be. And it's just asking for a high number, hoping you get half, and then you're in a good spot. So I think we're all saying the same things, which this has been a great conversation. And we definitely need to do work.
Thank you. It might be hard for me to see when people put their hand up because now I'm juggling it all on my phone. But I think, is there anyone else we missed? I feel strongly, and even Rich touched on it, that as we do our best to become market driven, that right there is also going to help. But I don't know how it works in the law schools here in the state, but I sure hope that students get to learn about indigent defense. I think that's a big deal. So anyway, okay, if we haven't missed anyone's comment, then Matt has texted to me that it would be great to get some sort of a motion to help staff proceed with something. How did you say it, Matt?
I think directing staff to prepare a plan to implement a plan or strategy to achieve these standards in the state.
Yeah, have them take all of our input, kind of our concerns, our thoughts, how it's all so integrated, and come up with something.
And that would be, of course, then we would come back and present that to the commission at a later date and take feedback and process it that way. So
yeah,
I think
and everyone has
Well,
acknowledged it wouldn't be for this session. So, but it's kind of what do we call it? I'm trying to remember the term. You go in steps, right? As you yeah, as you know a direction, we have far to go, but you you map out steps to get there, I think is definitely wise. So anyway, if someone is ready to make a motion, we can do that.
You need a motion for that?
I think so. I think I'd just like a public acknowledgement from the commission that this is what we want to do.
I will make the motion as articulated by Matt.
I'll second that. It's Tom.
Okay. All right, very good. So let's just say, I think there's another text I need to find from Margaret. Margaret, do you want to speak to the motion, or was there just another thought you have?
No, I approve the motion. I just was curious whether it would be helpful to staff to have a few of us kind of pitch in that endeavor. So that was my.
Love that.
Yeah, that's a great offer. So staff, feel free to, invite people to be part of that. I think that might be helpful to you. I mean, some here have the entire history of this commission in their experience.
Sorry, it is a big it is a marketing issue. I think Tom's point is a good one. We don't want to scare anybody off. We want to see like we're being reasonable. We're doing it, twice the job on half the money kind of thing. And the thing that I tend to come back to is, the lawyers who were asking to give us hours probably aren't crazy about the idea of accounting to us. And I think that's a part of the data gathering at the bottom end that we always need to be looking hard at. That's just
Well, and I'll tell you, if you would have told me while I was at LDA that I would have a third of the cases that I did, if I were to report the data by the minute, I probably would have been more than happy to do that. So I think that's also part of the communication, right? Communicating to the attorneys what benefit they're going to get from reporting accurately. So
yeah, reporting actually is to their benefit because it shows how much work they're doing.
Yeah, that's definitely, I mean, that's something that Rich would drive home at almost every meeting that we had was, this is information that I'm going to use to take to the county to justify additional positions, lighter caseloads, the market rate.
Yeah, but Michael, I just have to tell you that there is no public defender on this planet that said, I'm going to be a public defender so I can track time. That's just never happened, right? And Matt will tell you that when we went to that system, there was a ton of resistance. And my message has been consistent since the beginning, and that is, it's going to help us. I am just shocked at how remarkably helpful time tracking has been. We give them time tracking data every quarter and give them an explanation of what's happening in the case. It just sets the whole narrative. And people have these very interesting questions about looking at sort of the time data that we give them. We give them different slices of time data related to what different cases are. And people are remarkably curious about what's happening. We don't disclose any work product or privilege, but you can also talk about a narrative about what are the tasks involved in a criminal case, the time tracking information that, again, and then there's some accountability component to that, as there should be, I think. But it's just been so remarkably helpful to us in terms of turning around our relationship with the county, getting them to understand what we're doing, and then convincing them that our attorneys deserve to be paid at a reasonable market rate. And all of those things really, I think that the initial aspect of that really is traced to when we started time tracking 4 or 5 years ago.
I have a question, Rich, which I've had before, but it's come up again in my mind. I know that in our Davis County criminal justice system, even just the other day, we had a discussion about WebEx visits and the help that's been to save time and to have more time to visit with clients. I mean, is that a thing everywhere to be able to do it that way, or does it just depend on the case?
It's not, it's generally not a thing everywhere. They probably do it in Davis County. There's a much bigger challenge in Salt Lake County. That may evolve as they give people in Salt Lake County tablets to utilize. There's some security issues relative to securing the internet that become a little bit more difficult if everybody has an individual tablet. It becomes a little bit more difficult for us. There's some help that I would suggest. There's some help with WebEx. However, there are a few things I think that are more effective than a face-to-face meeting. And I don't know that you can completely avoid face-to-face meetings with clients by substituting WebEx for that. I mean, some of it worked during the pandemic and was helpful, but I do think that there's also a need to be able to have it. You know, Matt can speak to that, I think, as well as I can in terms of the importance of those kinds of meetings.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you. Okay, let's see. We have a motion and a second. So let's just say all in favor?
Aye.
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 And then are there any who are opposed? Okay, great. That gives staff direction. That was a good suggestion, Matt. And then I think there was only one more item. Well, we do have a member of the public, so I don't want to miss that. Don't let me miss that in case someone wants to speak. Because now I can't see any of you. I'm just on my phone dealing with limited earth, it seems like, on my phone. There we go. So we have to talk about the date of our next meeting, right, Matt? And you want to walk us
Right.
through that, or options?
Yeah, so normally we have our meetings on the third Thursday of the month. But historically, November, December is a little tricky with the holidays. And so I wanted to suggest that we combine those and have a commission meeting on probably the first or second week of December to avoid some of those issues. We also have our non-lapsing, the innovation grants that will be submitted by November 15th. And so I think we would be able to organize those and present those to the commission if we had 3 weeks to get those together. So what I would suggest is the 12th, whoops, wrong month, sorry, let me get here. The 14th of December, so that would still be on a Thursday, but it would be the second Thursday in December rather than the third, and we would skip the November meeting.
Skip in November, and you're looking at, did you say December then?
December 14th.
December 14th, okay. Believe it or not, oh, I was gonna say I already have that on the calendar, but I don't. It's our Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, but that's happened before. We just try to be done before 3:30. So yeah, if people are looking right now.
We have a CCJJ commission.
Yeah, that's what I have too. Is that right, Tom? Do we have a meeting that day? I have it on my calendar.
Yes, that's correct.
Noon to 2.
Is that gonna stay there? Because I know that the November one was shuffled around, or no, wasn't the October one
Yeah.
canceled?
It's the October one that we moved
Okay.
back a month, but December is still scheduled based on the conversations we're having that we may have to take a vote.
What about the 7th, then the first Thursday of December?
Probably. Tom, is that the day we're flying back from Atlanta?
That is the day that we would be flying back. There's a group of us going there, a Bureau of Justice discussion group, working group. So we've got 8 of us going there.
What if
Well,
we
the,
do 4
sorry.
o'clock, 2 o'clock on 2:30 on the 14th until
Right.
4:30?
Yeah,
That was
That's
right.
what I was going to suggest. I almost would prefer having both meetings, CCJJ and IDC, on the same afternoon. That way it's not,
Yeah.
sometimes having meetings is disruptive. So
Yeah, that's totally fine with me. I may need someone to chair when it goes beyond 3:30, since I chair the CJCC in my county. But that's totally fine with me. sometimes we have a 1 hour meeting too, you know, so. Just have somebody,
what-
if I have to drop off, I think that's a great idea. I think that date is actually a good choice for me too.
Would 2:30 work? Because CCJJ usually goes right up to the,
Yeah, we
Yeah,
should
we can do that.
2:30.
We can do that.
2:30, so starting at 2:30 on December 14th. That sounds like a good option for
Great.
working it out with everybody's schedules. Okay, I can't see any message in the chat, so speak up if somebody's trying to say something there.
Not seeing anything.
Okay. Okay, great. And then the last item on the agenda for today is just any public comment. Is there anyone who would like to speak?
No comment.
Okay, all right, very good. Well, good meeting, lots to talk about. Incrementally, that's the word, Leslie, that I was trying to think. Government often moves slowly and incrementally, but nonetheless, we need to know where we're headed, right? So thanks everybody for bringing such good discussions and thoughtful comments. I think that's it for today. So I'll take a motion to adjourn if there's nothing else someone wants to say.
move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, very good. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, everybody.
Beautiful
Bye.
weekend. Enjoy fall break, Michael Drexel. How fun is that?
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.